So from the Cardinia Shire Council area, one of our stalwart iNaturalists is Tricia Stewart. Tricia is a natural area team leader with the Royal Botanic Gardens in Cranbourne. Tricia has an astounding observation count in iNaturalist of 18,310 observations. And Tricia's presentation today, Australia's Untold Road Toll, recording roadkill and road trauma. And Tricia, I'll ask if you could advise the viewers when there might be some images of roadkill you're going to be presenting. So I hand it over to you, Tricia.
Thank you. I have put together a family-friendly presentation, so there are no images of the types of images that I get to look at lots of when I'm doing that project. So I will just share my screen, and Rob, feel free to virtually poke me in the ribs if I'm going too long, but I will try and stick to my 10 minutes. Right. So as Rob said, I'm looking at projects that pack a punch. So from a lot of the other participants tonight, you're going to be hearing about how they use iNaturalist to log observations of biodiversity data all around the different municipalities. And as you can see by my 18,000 plus observations, I also do that. And you can also see that maybe I need to get another hobby rather than just logging photos of biodiversity. But I enjoy doing it, so I will continue. But what we also know is that iNaturalist is so powerful. It's more than just logging individual baseline biodiversity data. You can actually set up different projects while you're in there as well. So at the Royal Botanic Gardens, and Ricardo, one of the other speakers, also works at the Royal Botanic Gardens with me. We use iNaturalist to do so much of our day-to-day work and our monitoring. And one of the key projects that we set up as part of the monitoring at the Royal Botanic Gardens, and then we've expanded that out to other municipalities like Cardinia Shire and City of Casey as well, is logging roadkill. So we had a bit of an issue with that on our main entry driveway, which is about 1.5 kilometres long, winds its way through a bushland to the Australian garden. And we needed to be logging that biodiversity data, the roadkill data, in order to justify what we had to do to fix the problem of roadkill. So everything requires good, credible data as justification. You know, when you're spending lots of money, lots of funding to put in road ecology solutions, you really need to be able to back that up with research quality data. So I set up this project. What I would say just quickly, projects work a little bit differently. There's two different kinds of projects in iNaturalist. One, and you can see on the little iPhone screenshot on the left, there's a whole big list. You can go through so many different projects that you can join. There's lots of projects that are set up where you're automatically joined, and they're like an umbrella project that they set the parameters of what the project's looking for, whether it's, you know, they're logging a certain species across a certain area, or all the biodiversity within a municipality. You can do bio-blitzes, and they will just automatically filter any observations that meet those parameters, and they'll pop them in the project. And then there's more specific projects like the one that I'll be showing you. Those actually require that you look for them and then join them. So you can see up in the top right-hand corner, the second screenshot that you can see there is the home page for my roadkill project on iNaturalist. And in order to join that, you would have to go to that main page and click join this project. That's going to ask you a few things just to make sure you agree to conditions of the project that say things like, I will not stop my car in the middle of the road to get out and take a photo of, you know, a roadkill wombat and present a risk to myself and other drivers and that sort of thing. So just around safety, please go and join that project, because I'm sure you could all have very valuable contributions to it. So Australia's Untold Road Toll, recording roadkill and road trauma. Who should be using this project in Australia? Pretty much anyone who has any concern for wildlife in, on and around our roads. So in particular, there'd be a lot of wildlife carers and rescuers. Often you guys are the ones who have the best information. You're constantly going out and picking up wombats in the same spot that keep getting repeatedly hit in the same areas. So you have a lot of that data. You just need to be logging it in the right spot so you can take it to a council or a road authority. councils and road authorities, municipal officers, Rob Jones, are people that should also be absolutely all over this project, whether that's logging the project or just being aware of the data and tapping in to use that. And any member of the community who has concerns for wildlife, anyone can pull over in a safe spot, hop out and take a photo of, you know, an animal that's been struck on the road. And while you may not be able to save that animal, you can put the data to really good use and hopefully protect animals, you know, moving forward in that same spot. So the benefits of projects like this is we have an increased understanding of where problem areas are. So hotspots start to come out when you start logging them on a map. And you will see as we go through this presentation, a few spots where it's really clear that it's a hotspot. So we can target solutions to those spots. We get an increased understanding of which species are most at risk in which locations. And as I say, it allows us to tailor solutions to fix the problem as it is. So it actually gives us what the problem profile is, and then we can look at what the solution to that is. iNaturalist in general, as well as with projects, mean you can resource share all that data collection. So the next person doing something in road ecology doesn't have to go out and try and gather a bunch of information as well. They can tap into this one, you know, one-stop shop for all of this data. So the data can be used 100,000 times over. It's never going to run out of steam. It's just going to keep getting more and more in-depth data as it goes along. The more people that add to it, the more people can get out of it. And the other huge benefit with iNaturalist in general is it is a user-friendly, very free platform for all the community to use. It collects credible data of not just the roadkill, but, you know, all the other biodiversity as well. And you can use that credible data to lobby road authorities, whether that be, you know, your Vic roads or your local government, for positive and effective change. So not just putting up a sign that says kangaroos in the area, signage isn't particularly effective. This will actually give you the basis for a real and effective solution. So on the right-hand side there, you can see there's a map of Australia, and you can see lots of red dots on that map. So the project covers all of Australia. So any roadkill that's logged in that project inside of Australia will be logged on this map. So you can see all the areas that are most densely populated are the ones that get the most observations, and we'll zoom in a little bit on those. So zooming in around Melbourne or Greater Melbourne, and you can kind of work out there, you know, City of Case, you can pretty much all of the shires who are represented here today, you get a bit of an idea of where they are on the map, and all the blue pins that are dropped are roadkill that have been logged in those areas. So what I did, and I'm trying to keep it brief, but I can filter that map for just certain areas. So there are lots of things called places in iNaturalist. Most municipalities will have their boundary as a single, basically a polygon around a place. I think Cardinia Shire might have it split up into three, like Northern Cardinia Shire and Southern and so forth, which, can I say, just makes it really difficult to filter things if you want to see all of Cardinia Shire as a whole. So that there might be something there for you guys to work on. But if I put just a custom boundary around the general area of Cardinia, this is the profile of animals that are showing up in the roadkill project for just that area. So it's showing you all the species that are in order of most observations. And you can see, very sadly, that southern brown bandicoots are the #1 species logged in that custom boundary area, with 100 observations of road-killed bandicoots in the region. Very sadly, I'd say 97 of those are probably my own observations. And if we were to zoom in on the Explore map a little bit closer, so this is zoomed in to a resolution showing Manx Road primarily and a bit of Kuirup. The reason being, I drive from Cranbourne down Manx Road to Kuirup every day, twice a day as I go to work. And every single one of those blue pins that are dropped on that zoomed in map is a deceased bandicoot on the road. So a federally endangered species that's been killed on the road just since I've started logging them. So this isn't like 20 years worth of data. This is maybe 3 years worth of data. And when you filter your project, so I've zoomed in to a closer area just showing Manx Road around Quirrup, and then you filter it just for a particular species, in this case just for the southern brown bandicoots, what you start to see are a few clusters of roadkill spots. So we're starting to see the hot spots come out in that visualization on the map. So a few circles there just to point out the obvious. Now, some of those, like the one in the very center of the map there, looks like just 3 pins. So you'd be thinking to yourself, why is she circling 3 pins? It's not really much of a hotspot. But if I was to zoom in on that resolution, there's actually 5 pins where the bandicoots were all killed in such an exact location that any further out zoomed than that, you can't actually see that there's multiple pins because all the pins are sitting on top of each other. Worse than that one, there's another spot down in the right-hand corner of the screen, which is the corner of Quirrup Hillsville Road and Boundary Drain Road. And I think it looks like about 6 pins. But when you zoom in on that 6 pins actually expands out to 18 dead bandicoots in a single intersection on that road. And they were all logged within probably 2 to 3 years of each other. And very sadly, one of those bandicoots was a female who had 3 pouch young. And even as I was approaching her, I could see that she was deceased, but I could see that her pouch was moving. So I had to take those pinkies to a wildlife carer in Bales, Andrina, who does fantastic work in Bales. But unfortunately, they were all too young and they had sustained trauma as well. So there's 18 pins showing bandicoots there, but one of those pins was actually 4 bandicoots in one go because she had 3 joeys in her pouch. So this is really depressing stuff, and I apologize for starting off the night with really, really depressing information. But what's good about this is this gives us the power to log this information. So these animals were getting killed on this road for probably decades, and not so much going unnoticed. No doubt there are lots of, you know, local people. I know Susan's might be out there in the crowd, who's around the Bales area. I know she logs bandicoots in iNaturalist, but I also know that lots of people have been seeing them for a long time and they just haven't had the platform to give credible data monitoring to that. So they might go to council and say, I'm seeing lots of bandicoots killed in the same spot, but until you can produce that credible data, and this is what the program does for you, it's really hard to make that justification. It's kind of anecdotal evidence, which is limited in its usefulness. So the really good story about this is I could take this credible data to Cardinia Shire, and kudos to Cardinia Shire. They really came to the party. I spoke to Kevin Alexander, who was there at the time, who many of you will know, and set up a meeting with Peter Quigley, who's still there and works in the civil roads construction. He's one of the project managers. I happen to know that Boundary Drain Road and another road that featured heavily, Main Drain Road, were both due to be sealed. And so we could take this data and go to them and say, we know that the road's due for an upgrade. What can we do using this data, knowing the exact places where things are being killed on the road? How can we address that? And to Cardinia's credit, they took that project on. And so in the process of upgrading that road, they installed some under road culverts. So this is just up the road from the intersection that I showed you. So this is on Boundary Drain Road. A nice little Google Earth view there. You can see a bit of planting on either side of the road. So to the right-hand side is the southern boundary drain. You can see all that nice dense vegetation that runs all the way along that drain. So there is a nice solid habitat corridor all the way down there. And what you can't see off to the left of the screen is Main Drain is only 2 or 3 house blocks to the left. And so there's more solid habitat corridor all through there. This is one of those spots where bandicoots were getting killed a lot. I think I picked up maybe 13 bandicoots on this stretch of road in about 9 months, within 9 months. Sorry, 9 weeks, not 9 months. It was all in breeding season. And so they installed, when they were sealing this road, an under road culvert in that location. So looking at those hotspots, knowing that that was where bandicoots are crossing the road, and that was the results that we got. So all we needed to do was, looking at that data, facilitate a solution, and lo and behold, bandicoots took that up. So luckily at the Royal Botanic Gardens, we had trialled this project. So we were very confident that if we were to put in under road culverts, bandicoots would take them up. But it's all about that data collection and being able to go to road authorities, land authorities, rail authorities as well. And if you present to them that data that, you know, there is a problem, what the problem looks like, quantify the problem, they're much more likely to be able to go, all right, let's sit down and come up with a solution. So I guess my take home message from that is everybody get on this project, start logging roadkill in your area. It doesn't have to be federally endangered species. It can be birds, it can be blue-tongued lizards, it can be wombats, kangaroos. Start arming yourself with really useful data because you can get really great outcomes from it. So don't worry about trying to get wildlife crossing road signs. They don't work. Use these. Yeah, and I guess that's it. I think that's my 10 minutes up. It's very
Thanks,
fast,
Tricia.
sorry.
No, and I can vouch that information is really powerful from a council perspective. Yes, so, and Tricia, I think it was 7 culverts in all that were installed.
Yeah. So there's 2 on boundary drain and about 5, I think, on main drain.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they don't have fencing, but certainly the culverts themselves are used by bandicoots. And City of Casey are also putting in culverts and fencing with theirs. So the more, and we're in talks with Vic Roads as well and DECA to start looking at more of those. And that's all based on being able to gather that evidence and present it to them. They kind of can't ignore it when it's you know, in that credible data there.
Yeah, and that's effectively that's $50,000 worth of work that's informed. So that's great.
Yeah.
Well done. Thank you so much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Tricia, we've had some, I think Paul has said you can't find the project, but what we might do at the end of this is be able to send out an email to everyone that has a link to your project on iNaturalist for those that want to engage with it.
I can drop it into the chat as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be
in the background. So yeah, sure.
Thanks.
And the seed collection project as well.
I will drop that in there. Please feel free to give everyone my work email address, and I'm more than happy to, if anyone does have interest in how they can, you know, sort of log their seed collecting. I guess it allows people to keep their genetic provenances really transparent. Please contact me. It's just a pilot program, and I'd love for anyone in Indie nurseries and things like that to jump on and give it a run and tell me what you think.
Thank you very much, Tricia. All right. I think up next we have Ian Rainbow. So Ian's one of our beautiful volunteers from the Yarra Rangers. Ian is the president of the Friends of Upwey South Reserve Friends Group. How long have you guys been doing that for, Ian?
Since about 2017, the council Bushlands crew invited us to, asked me if I'd consider running a small Friends of group in the local park, probably because I kept nagging them about doing stuff in it, getting rid of weeds. And yeah, so that was Jen and Gavin. And then lo and behold, they lobbied the entire suburb, but fortunately only about 8 or 10 answered it. So yeah, that's how we started. And from there on, you know, well, I guess my career in conservation, I started off as a bird watcher for a long time and moved on to becoming involved in projects like being Friends of the local park and a couple of others, and discovered digital photography and started taking photos. But I've got about, I don't know how many, 15,000 photos sitting on a hard drive somewhere, not doing very much. And when I heard about iNaturalist, I thought, oh yeah, that's a good way to do it. And then of course smartphones came along, and you can take reasonable photos with those. Reasonable, they don't have to be perfect, obviously. But and so what I've got here on this slide are some of the organisms that I've found around, some of the more spectacular ones I found around our local reserve, starting with Eastern Rosella, the milkmaid, early Nancy's there with actually fruiting bodies on them, and that lovely young poisonous toadstool there, whose name escapes me at the moment. And then we also have a few orchids scattered around the reserve, and that's a common bird orchid there. But over the terms of the project, where we've got them to stop mowing, a few others like sun orchids have popped up as well. We found those. We've got the list up to about 7 for a small, effectively very suburban reserve. We're doing quite well. Then there's the yellow star. Not necessarily a success, but I found it happened to be in the same spot 2 years running at the same day, and lo and behold, there it was again. So I asked the council to stop mowing there, and of course all the kangaroo grass very luxuriantly grew, and we haven't seen it since. So not necessarily a success. Coral fungi, and one that really caught my eye that I often tell people about in Gardens for Wildlife is the fiddler beetle. Only ever seen one, and he's a great lesson in guiding people. And when you're creating a garden for wildlife, leave sticks and branches lying around in your garden, because that's where his grubs live. Mulch is no good. He's got to have sticks. So hopefully we'll have a few more of those. And there's our logo and a group. So perhaps next slide, Vinny.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So you're sort of today you're talking about how you use iNaturalist. What are some of the different ways that you like to use iNaturalist yourself, or that others might like to use iNaturalist?
Oh, well, given that if you've got a smartphone in your pocket, mine's just about grafted to me these days. You've got plenty of opportunity. But if you see something interesting, have a shot at taking a photo. And that's where most of my observations happen. So it might be in the garden, might be down in a park, or just about anywhere. Today I took a photo of a wattle bird that wouldn't move away down at the Royal Botanic Gardens. It stood still long enough, very close, so I got him. Well, you might have a theme, and we heard about that with the roadkill from Tricia, but just for your own interest even, perhaps have a look at some interactions between different organisms, pollinators, or you might want to say, look at all these weeds that are everywhere. Time someone cleaned them up. Pest organisms like wasps, or perhaps you want to track orchids, although orchids, it's always good to actually hide the location so you don't get people digging them up. And of course that predator-prey nesting, and I've got some examples of these, so you might want to target a certain area. And for Upwey South Reserve of it, within iNaturalist, you can denote an area and say, well, what have we found there? If you want to get more detailed, as far as I know, you probably have to wander off to the Australian Atlas of Living Australia for proper data extraction. But this can give you a good idea of what's already there. And then, of course, if you want to get competitive, there's the Biodiversity Blitz, which is what this seminars and webinars all about. So to help in any given council area, why not just look at the observations that have already been recorded in your area, zoom it up, you do the map view, zoom up a bit, and you'll be able to see, perhaps next slide, Vinny, you'll be able to see what's going. So we'll go through these slightly out of order. So these sort of interactions and behaviour that I happen to, they really caught my eye. So you can, really weird flies mating, strange things. The first successful building of a nest in an insect hotel I put out. And then every so often you see a wasp dragging a giant huntsman up and down walls to squash in a hole. One that caught my eye was this robber fly out on my back deck carrying off a feral bee. I call them feral bees, other people call them honeybees, I suppose. And then that satin green forester, well, I didn't know what it was at the time, but there it was on a milkmaid, and it's feeding and I guess pollinating as well. It's quite a spectacular moth. I think it's a moth. So next slide.
Beautiful.
So if we look at Upwey South Reserve, you just draw a circle around it effectively in map view. Not all of those readings are mine. A good fair few of them are. And you'll see if you're on live view that you've got a scrollable list of the organisms you can go through, or you can click on the drop points, and there's the key over there to the right if you want to look at it. Now, I guess if you want to do distributions and all the rest, you're going to probably have to go off to the ALA to dump data down, which is a bit more complex. So the next one, talking about looking at where observations are. This is last year's BioBlitz in Yarra Ranges. And if you look where, I'll go back one, most of the readings are out there all along the Yarra Valley or down around the Dandenong Ranges and down the bottom, Birds Land and Listerfield, I guess. And then a scattering around other centres, but I guess they're probably following mainly roadways. So if you have another look, next slide, please. What I did was do that in my local area. And I don't know how many of you know what Upway is like or where it is, but high up on the hill where Vin is scrolling up and down that strip of green points, I noticed that there was actually totally blank last year or the year before. And so my wife and I have just made a particular point of going up there a couple of times during September and clickety-click all over the place, getting a nice wide range of observations that you may not get otherwise. So we hope we're going to find another few spots. If you get adventurous, we're following a track there. If you get adventurous, you can head off it without seeing what the topography is like. You could probably drop off an edge through there if you really want to do it a bit more extremely. So yeah, I'd encourage people to just do that. It's not very hard to find the blank spots. I'm sure there are ranges is full of little neglected reserves. I shouldn't say neglected, I guess, but reserves. Go and have a look at them. Next slide. And just one of the themes you might follow is pollinators. And one of the things that annoys me as a garden for wildlife enthusiast is that the wildlife keeps using the wrong plants and introduced plants and things like that. So that top row of images is a dragonfly on an African daisy, European wasp on a banksia, painted lady, female on the African daisy. They're very attractive, those African daisies, and so are buddleias. And just for a change, down the bottom left, there's a hoverfly and a bulbine lily. And one that surprised me, the little cultivar leptospermum on the right. I was really pleased to see that producing a bloom at last in my garden. And popped it up, and I didn't see them at first, but once you blow up the photo, there's a lot of black ants sitting there in the middle, presumably doing useful things, possibly pollinating them. Okay, so they're the sort of things you even without leaving your garden, you can get nice things. And you're showing interactions there. So if you're following pollinators, I know there's occasionally a pollinator project gets popped up. You can go and find things like that. I guess you can do, even if you're not doing it as part of the BioBlitz, if you've got a backlog of photos just sitting on your hard drive and they're adequate quality or show enough information anyway, not too blurry, people should be encouraged to go through those and start putting them up. So I've done that a couple recently. So next slide, Vinny. So sometimes I get commented that, why should I, I've already got a magpie on my list of birds. Why would I do more? Well, it's in a different place. It might be different. Perhaps you're north of the divide and it's got a black back instead of a white back. Or you might see, some seasonality. Common brown butterflies, males and females seem to appear at different times and be observed at different times. I presume they do overlap at some stage, otherwise they don't breed. But adding to that database of general data, looking for where scientists are looking to mine that to turn it into useful knowledge. Well, you can determine ranges. You might be showing up when migratory species appear. You might monitor population shifts due to climate heating. Came across a little paper just the other day about some moths that have in the US that have some of the grubs have red heads, some of the grubs have the caterpillars have black heads. And and they seem to be in the process of dividing into 2 species. Since they're all in lockdown, the scientists data mined iNaturalist for observations all the way from Florida up to Ottawa, so all up there through the eastern coast, I guess. And they found that in warmer climates, there were more breeding opportunities because they could breed more than once a year, and the speciation was going on faster than up north, where they only bred once a year, and so you're all mixed in. Well, they'll be interbreeding between the 2 strains. So they're able to start drawing conclusions about the rate of speciation as a result of latitude and warming. And of course, that will change once the climate heats up.
Looks like, Ian, you could
wind up
looks like you can contribute by having a theme or looking at areas that might not have been heavily monitored in the past, but particularly here it shows you that you could just record anything, and who knows how it might be used in the future as a part of the volume of data that is getting recorded in iNaturalist. So you're contributing even if you realize that, even if you're not really actively thinking about what you're putting in necessarily.
Exactly. And I do have a bit of a scientific background, but it's really good to be able to feel that you're contributing scientifically, but you don't have to go through the pain of designing an experiment. If we're doing the stats, you're actually feeding in the data, and someone else can do something, perhaps something serious and something really useful. As Tricia was pointing out, you can start lobbying people to make a difference with that data. I think that's fantastic. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Ian. So I'd like to welcome Debbie will be speaking next.
Okay, so we've got Debbie Sesso, who is a resident of the City of Casey, but she's also one of our staff members. So Debbie works at Wilson Botanical Gardens, and she's previously worked on our bush crew. And for this presentation, I'll be interviewing Deb on how she's been using iNaturalist. So my first question for you, Deb, is when did you start using iNaturalist?
Yeah, look, I can't remember exactly when I started using it. It would have been about 5 to 7 years ago, maybe. I don't even know if it's been around that long, but I know that I used it a lot more effectively and used it a lot more after doing an information session with Tricia at the Botanical Gardens. And yeah, that was really that really kind of propelled me into the use of it in the way that I got to see more of the layers that were available, and the different projects that I could add information to, and learn more about how important what it was to add data to that kind of platform, and yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, Tricia's sessions are incredible, really inspiring. So I guess my next question was, what motivated you to start using it, which you partly answered, but was there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was working out in Casey's natural areas, and I still am in awe of how amazing the areas are. But I think it connected me to more of the individual plant species and animal species that was there, and it also allowed me to put it in a kind of in one place where other people could access that and see what was around as well. And I kind of use it for different things. Sometimes I added it because I knew what the plant was, or the animal. Sometimes I added something because I didn't know what it was, and I was hoping someone would identify it for me.
Yeah, nice. All right. Next question is, what do you like most about iNaturalist?
Yeah, just that other people can access that data and use it to do things with it that I most likely wouldn't be able to achieve. Like Tricia said, she's used a lot of data from it for her projects, and she's been able to achieve great things. So although I'm not actually achieving those great things, I can contribute to those great things. And I think, you know, in the city of Casey with development, just like running at great speed, I feel like it's really important to document what is around and what was around, and have that information available for maybe kinder development for our natural areas and the animals that inhabit them.
Excellent. And as a Casey staff member, I can tell you, and so it is really, really valuable. And next question, what do you think are the most important skills for making an iNaturalist sighting?
Just have a go at it. Like, I think that's the most important thing, just to have a go, just to open up that app. Even if you're not sure of how to use it, it is quite user friendly and easy, the process. And you don't have to know what it is. There's other people that can identify it for you. Yeah, just take a picture and add it. I think and although it's not the iNaturalist app that kind of got this information, I think the City of Casey had a photo competition, and someone entered a photo, and it turned out to be a yellow-footed antechinus, and it was taken at Wilson Botanic Park. If someone hadn't have taken that photo, like, we would never have known. So I guess people that work in certain areas, they're not always able to be observing as well as, I guess, us citizen scientists that have got the spare time, that are strolling, that are taking their time to look at everything and take everything in. So yeah, don't be afraid to have a snap, because you never know what you'll capture.
Totally, and I second that. Like, we had a iNaturalist sighting earlier in the year of a powerful owl out in Warneet, which has led us to going and doing surveys in Warneet to see whether they're going there more often. Okay, my final question for you, Deb, is how did you find iNaturalist when you started using it?
It's one of those things that you can have the basic skills to, just like I said, have a go at a photo. And there's like many layers that you can actually kind of find within the app, like you're seeing some of Trisha's projects and the amazing information Trisha and even Ian's been able to kind of extract from that app and the data that's on that app. So yeah, I guess it's kind of walks you through as your skills improve or your curiosity improves to look at something else, and kind of can it allows you to grow, but also stay safe in just adding some pictures of whatever you've seen.
Fantastic. And that brings me to the end of my questions, but I might hand over to Vinny to see if there are any questions from the participants.
Thank you very much, Debbie.
I think with that one, you can lodge them as unknown species. So someone might be able to identify it further down the track. You don't have to be able to identify exactly what it is.
I think that's the beauty of it, and that's sort of the point of iNaturalist, is that you identify it as far as you can, and it might just be the identifier that it's a plant, but other people will be able to find that and improve on it, and someone might bring it down to genus, and then the next person might be able to bring it to species, and so these things might happen over 12 months' time, but eventually the sheer volume of people using iNaturalist brings us to an endpoint where we get good data. I think Trisha, is your hand up?
Yeah, I just thought I'd say on it being able to identify things. So iNaturalist actually has really powerful image recognition software. There's sometimes if your connection's not good, it doesn't quite load sometimes what the suggestions would be, but I recommend taking a few different photos, particularly of plants, and making sure that you've got the location set as to where they were when you first upload that and when you're first looking for suggestions on what the species might be, because it's pretty rare that I wouldn't get at least a suggestion of a genus on even some of the most obscure fungi and slime molds and tiny beetles and things like that in the suggestions. So happy to chat to people at another stage if you're having troubles with it, but yeah, make sure your location's set, because it will cross-reference the geotagging of that photo against what species are in the area. And if you have a few photos, then you can toggle through the different photos and it might pick up the recognition of one of those, a better photo of the flower, say, and might give you a little bit more results in what it could be.
Thanks, Trisha. And Robert, your hand's up also.
I was just going to say that the Seek app, we just mentioned in someone's posted in the chat, has been advised to me. I haven't actually had a go at it yet, but that it's very good for recognition. Has anybody used the Seek app
No, I've
before?
not heard of it.
I had a little bit of a go at it. It's sort of live camera time looking at the object, and it's fairly heavy on your battery use if that's an issue for you. But it's basically a live version of and simpler version of iNaturalist. I think once you accept it, it feeds it into iNat. So I find it's just as easy to use. Well, you might use PlantNet, for instance, or you might use just iNaturalist to quickly identify something and then decide whether you're going to submit it as a reading, as an observation or not. Comes in handy to impress other people at working bees when they don't know what a weed is, and you can say what it is. So on the other thing that Tricia said there about the GPS, and someone else asked, your photo metadata does go in, but it's very important that you always check that the GPS reading you've got is valid. I've often, perhaps not so much with my newer camera, but my phone, I've often found that the position has been put, several kilometres to the left or north or right or something like that. So always confirm that your GPS reading is appropriate to the spot that you're using. Otherwise, it can lead you to confusion later. And I guess with following on from just saying taking photos, I've found that it's actually got told to go back and take another photo of the underside of a daisy, so we can do it. So look at tops and bottoms of leaves, perhaps stems, and the photo of the flower and underneath the flower as well to see a little bit better of the anatomy. So
yeah, that's certainly important. And I think we might jump onto our last speaker for today.
So my name's Jara. I'm from the city of Greater Dandenong, and I've brought my dad Ricardo along as our iNaturalist champion. And I thought Ricardo would be a really good person to interview. He lives in the city of Greater Dandenong, and he's one of our top observers. I think he's in our top 5 observers for Greater Dandenong, so that's incredible. He's always out there getting really important biodiversity data for us. But Ricardo also works in conservation. He works at the Botanic Gardens with Trish, and he's been in conservation for over 20 years, and I'm sure he'll add anything else he wants to, but I think I'll just fire away with some questions. So the first question that I was going to ask you, Ricardo, is what got you interested in iNaturalist, and where did you hear about it initially?
Thanks, Darren. Hi, everyone. And look, you've wrecked my joke. I was going to say that's a really cool surname that you've got there, Darren. Anyway, look, I probably a bit like Deb, I can't actually remember how I came across it. It was about 2019, early 2019, when I decided to invest in a slightly better camera than my phone camera, and that's because I was really wanting to catalogue and identify all the things that I was seeing out in the field. Either through work or, sorry, my chair just went down by itself. And bushwalking, and you come across all these wonderful things, and half the time I was clueless as to what I was looking at. So I picked up a camera, and at the time I was aware of a few citizen science platforms already at play. So, apart from the state Victorian Biodiversity Atlas, there was the Atlas of Living Australia, more national biodiversity database. And then there are a few other things like eBird and NatureShare, Bowerbird, Fungi Map, akin to CSI, you name it. There was an app or some kind of citizen science-based platform out there. The problem was that they all were either fairly specific, as in the case of Fungi Map, or it didn't really have the capability to like you could upload things, but it didn't identify things for you in a lot of cases. So you already kind of had to know what you were looking at to then put it up. Certainly there was no community involvement helping you out with confirming identifications, things like that. And there certainly was no image recognition software attached to any of these things. Somehow I came across it, and I probably should apologize. I think I introduced iNaturalist to Tricia, so I think I created the iNaturalist monster, but a good monster. So yeah, I'm proud of that one. So yeah, the only problem, so when I came across it, my only problem was, is this thing an Australian-based thing? Is the data kept in Australia? Is it being looked at by scientists in Australia? That kind of those kinds of thoughts came to mind. And within a couple of months of me discovering iNaturalist, I found that I didn't use it for a couple of months because I wasn't too sure on it. And then I discovered that Atlas of Leaving Australia and iNaturalist were signing up an agreement where the Atlas of Leaving Australia would become the Australian node of iNaturalist. So that was thumbs up and a green light for me to go fully into using iNaturalist. I still sometimes do put something into the Victorian Biodiversity Atlas because it's not so good at mining data out of iNaturalist. It does end up there, but because the Victorian Biodiversity Atlas is the official place where developers have to look into it whenever they're proposing any kind of development that might impact on biodiversity. It is worth still putting some of the important stuff in there, but yeah, these days I spend most of my time on iNaturalist.
Yeah, nice. I'm glad that we got that chair malfunction on camera.
Yeah, that was great, wasn't it?
Wasn't the technical malfunction I was thinking would happen on a webinar, but that's great.
I'm good at technology, just not physical chairs.
Apparently. So yeah, you sort of answered the second question, but that was, how do you use iNaturalist? You were saying you have a decent camera at the moment, but that hasn't always been the case. So yeah, how do you use iNaturalist personally?
Yeah, look, if I'm caught without a camera, certainly the old phone, the old mobile phone, and its camera can come in handy. I guess, and there was a question, or there was a statement there from one of the viewers around not being able to get identification. What I do find is, particularly with small things like insects, if you take a photo of such a small subject, if you have a lot of other part of the landscape, or if it's sitting on a flower and you take all of the flower as well as the insect, the image recognition is going to hone in on the flower rather than the insect. So I tend to crop those. So I probably spent an equal amount of time sort of curating the photos that I put on iNaturalist, just number one, to make it easy for the image recognition software to do its magic, and number two, I'm kind to the people that are out there identifying things. So I don't like to put blurry photos and things like that up that make it more difficult for the for those poor people trying to identify things. So hence why I did invest in in a better camera. And what I tend to do is I go out with the camera, I take photos all day long, I come home, and I'll either use the app on my tablet, or I'll upload it through the web browser. Just depends on how I'm feeling. They each have slightly different functions and capabilities. I find that the app, Tricia was mentioning, if you upload 4 or 5 photos of the same subject, you can actually flick through those photos, and each angle will give the image recognition software a different perspective. You don't get to do that on the web browser version. It doesn't do that. So, but the web browser version is much easier or to use as a batch uploader. So if you're doing, if you've got 300 photos and you want to whack them up onto iNaturalist pretty quickly, I tend to use the web browser and do batch uploading that way. Whereas with the app, you can't really do batch uploads. So it just depends on how much time you've got to play around with the images. But at its simplest form, if I'm caught without a camera and I'm out there, I turn my GPS on, I turn the app on my phone on, I use the inbuilt camera function within the app, I snap a photo and upload it, and it goes, it takes the time and location. So that gets me out of trouble if I'm caught without a camera. I'm much more an observer or an uploader of records than I am an identifier. I enjoy both, but I probably have 10 times more observations than identifications, and that's just a time constraint thing. Yeah, as I get the time, I'll sit down and do a little bit of identifying. Yeah, and it's as much about uploading records as it is about learning what's in the area as well. So I do tend to use pretty much daily iNaturalist, and that, whether that's uploading records or identifying others' records, or just to interrogate a particular area, whether it's for work or a place I'm intending on visiting, and seeing what's in season. Someone else, I think Ian mentioned, migratory species, that kind of stuff. That's where iNaturalist is pretty powerful.
Yeah, I really liked what you were saying about cropping images to make them usable for people to identify. I think another thing that I'm sure you'll agree on as well is if you are getting frustrated that nobody is identifying your images, it's always good to put it as the highest taxonomic group that you absolutely know it is. For example, if you know something is a plant and not an animal, you should put it as a plant, because when people are searching and putting filters on to search for their area of expertise, they'll be able to see that, oh, here are all the unidentified plants, and I can go through and look at them. Yeah, and I think you briefly sort of touched on it, but I'd love to know how iNaturalist has contributed to your personal understanding of nature and yeah, science and nature, and even specific groups or species of organisms.
Yeah, it's funny that I think my segment was focused on insects. That's how I thought this conversation would go. But and the reason for that is, for me, by far the improvements in my knowledge have been in the insect space and the fungi space. I was pretty clueless, kind of knew what a moth was and a beetle was, but even then, there are some beetles that just don't look like beetles, and I've only found that out through iNaturalist. It's not until you start using iNaturalist that you start coming across all the different shapes and sizes and colors and all the mimics. Sometimes you think you've got a particular species, and then you find out that there's a mimic that belongs to a whole other family of insects, and so it just opened my eyes to that world. You can go and buy spend a lot of money on identification books and very specific books. I've got, I think, a Mosquitoes of Victoria identification book, but it's iNat's free. It's there. You can break it down into different families, different genus, whatever your interest is. It's there for free. So these days you almost don't need an ID book. You can just almost solely rely on iNaturalist. But yeah, for me, insects was the game changer. And yeah, sure, the books are still there. They give you some of the the ecological information that you might not get through iNaturalist. But even in using iNaturalist, because there's usually, if you click on a genus or a particular species, there's usually an article, a Wikipedia article attached to it, and from there, it's a rabbit hole, isn't it? You just keep finding more information.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like it really is one of those apps that you can sort of get, you make the most of it yourself. You get as much or as little as you really want out of it. I can see Trisha's got her hand up, so I'll let her steal the show for a sec.
I was just going to add to something that Ricardo said about the books and the insects, and that is we've got a 9-volume series of Moths of Victoria, which I do use often when I'm identifying moths. But what I would say is one of the key people who go in and identify my moths on iNaturalist is Axel Callies, and he is one of the authors, the co-authors of Moths of Victoria, the 9-volume series. So the people that wrote the books on all of those things are on iNaturalist identifying stuff as well, which just gives you an idea of how powerful that network is. And that's all. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a good point, right? That there's so many experts in their field all over iNaturalist ready to identify whatever's there. I'm just aware of the time, so I'm going to skip ahead to the most interesting question, and I'll let you add whatever you want to the end. But what's the coolest or most interesting or important, memorable observation you've made through iNaturalist?
Okay, so obviously I don't have a PowerPoint, but I will share my screen. Hopefully I'll do this correctly for this. So hopefully there you should be seeing a picture of a lacewing. So this is the thing for me that you put something up on iNaturalist. You can see the lacewing. Yes, just confirm that for me.
Not yet.
I think I have to pick the screen, do I? Hang on. Yeah, share this one. Okay, here we go.
There you go. Yep.
You can see a lacewing.
Yep.
Very good. So yeah, this is the thing for as far as iNaturalist for me is concerned, is you put something up, and you can see there I put something up and had a go at the genus. But as it turns out, it wasn't that at all. And Ken Harris, again, one of the most famous entomologists, has come in, and Ken actually sent me a private message on this one and said, "Oh, look, I think what you've got there is actually something a bit special, but I'll just confer with someone else who wrote a book on these things." And you can see there, the banter around it. So it turns out that there was this particular species, and it became the first known photograph of a living specimen. So it was joined to that group. There's no other photo, not just on iNaturalist, of any. There's just hasn't been photographed before. So that was pretty cool. Similarly, this one was a similar thing. It wasn't the first one, but photographed, but it was the first one seen, certainly the first record of the species for Victoria, it says there. So you just find all these things. And
I'll scroll back up to the photo. That photo was beautiful.
I was going to say, can you click on the image and make it large for everyone?
Yeah, I'm just having trouble with the zoom little thing up the top.
Wow.
Well, look, this one was actually just taken. It's not a particularly good photo, but it was taken with it was just with my phone. This one actually, it was just came across it, and it was at the Royal Botanic Gardens in the city. So it was just at work one day. Look, there's a whole bunch of other stories. Pink beetle, similar story. This one was first photographed alive, or first known photograph of living specimen. You just, and I thought it was just a beetle. I've seen them before. It's just a pin beetle. I'm just going to put it up. I've taken hundreds of photos of this thing. I'm going to take another photo of it, and I'm going to put it up again. Well, it turned out to be one that I thought I'd seen before, but I hadn't. I'd seen a very similar one. So sometimes even those common species where you think I've got 10,000 records on iNaturalist for, you know, you just never know. It might be something very similar and very cool that you thought you knew, but you don't. Look, yeah, there's a few of those. Obviously not an insect, this one. The black-breasted kite. First known, I was out in the Mallee on holidays, and this kite flew 10 meters above my head. Snap, snap, snap. I thought, even as I looked at it, I thought, that's not one of the kites I'm used to, but you know, it could be a juvenile. They're always hard, the juvenile ones. Came home, uploaded to iNaturalist. The image recognition said black-breasted kite. I'm thinking it doesn't occur in Victoria, so you know, iNaturalist is so wrong on this one. So I actually took this one to a Facebook bird ID book, and everyone said, yep, that's what it is, a black-breasted kite, and that'll be a first record in Victoria. So yeah, look, you just never know when something pretty special and you know, it's going to write the science books again. Another example, gang cockatoo, endangered species. Very little research has been done on it. I got a private message based on this photo of the cockatoo feeding on Acacia dealbata, and the researcher is trying to get more information on the species because there's just not enough of it, and the fact that it's feeding on a dealbata is really important information. So again, you know, gangs I've taken quite a few photos of before, but just the behavior itself is quite interesting and can feed into that wider research. I think we're about out of time, but here's a cool one. A little jewel beetle. It's pretty special, this one. I don't think it was the first record in Victoria, I think, as well. Or it could be totally something new. Actually, this one was never settled down to species. It could actually be a totally undescribed species, this one. So someone one day might pick it up and yeah, come up with a species name. I've got a couple other examples, but I think we're out of time, so I'll probably just leave it there, hey?
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, so many firsts for Victoria, and yeah, I guess to tie it all together, like you said, you never know when an observation is going to be important. So the more photos you can take, the better, really. So yeah, thanks for sharing your knowledge and expertise and incredible photos. And I'll hand back to Vinny.
Thank you very much, Jara. Thanks, Ricardo. That was great. What I really liked yours showed is that, you know, you have your best guess, or you go to where you think your knowledge is at for whatever it is you're looking at, but the community can let you know if you've gone down the wrong path, and the conversation happens and everyone learns something, and it's a pretty friendly community that we're all a part of. So so don't worry about identifying something incorrectly, because you'll learn something along the way, and you know, you get there in the end, I suppose. Yeah, it's good to try and work to where you think your knowledge is at, but at the end of the day, yeah, don't worry about being wrong for not putting something up, not being correct. I think, yeah, get out there and have a go. Have we got any questions from the group before we wrap things up? We're a little bit over time, but that was just fantastic. There's some questions about the Gardens for Wildlife project on iNat. Jared, do you have some info on that?
That's a good question.
Is there an iNaturalist or Gardens for Wildlife project?
Yeah, Trish or Ricardo
is.
might know.
Yeah, there is. It's a bit of a pilot project. Look, to be honest, it's not my best work in projects. It's a little bit clunky. I can drop a link to it. Feel free to have a play around in there. But, you know, it isn't probably one of the more valuable projects that we've got going. But I'll happy to drop a link in the chat, and people can have a play and decide for themselves and get a bit more of a feel for projects in general. Beautiful,
thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming along tonight, and particularly thank you to our presenters. It's been, yeah, great to hear what you're doing. It's really appreciated. And hopefully everyone gets out there and gets involved in September for Bio Blitz.
Thank you. See ya.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Vinny. Thanks, everyone.
Much appreciated.
Thank you. Bye.